Let's begin this hour with the first test of a ground-launched cruise missile here in the U.S. in about 30 years. It's the first since Washington announced its withdrawal from the INF Treaty earlier this month. Now officials in Moscow and Beijing are accusing the U.S. of starting a brand new arms race. Joining us to discuss, we have professor and Cold War historian Jeremy Kuzmarov. Jeremy, good to see you. Does Moscow have a valid point about this latest cruise missile test, that it shows the U.S. had originally long planned to withdraw from the INF Treaty, despite them blaming Russia for the withdrawal?
I think so. Well, there had been allegations that the United States had violated the treaty beforehand with missile launchers in Romania. But this shows that, yeah, very likely this has been planned out for a long time. And I think the public has been conditioned with all this demonization of Russia that has been occurring over the last 4 or 5 years. The public has been conditioned to accept this new Cold War.
And Jeremy, I want to read to you what an official in Moscow stated. They said, the United States has obviously taken the course of escalating military tensions. We will not succumb to provocations. We won't allow ourselves to be pulled into a costly arms race. So do you think this is true in light of this recent missile testing, especially as it pertains to Russia? They've also tested some stuff. Will they be able to avoid another arms race?
I think it'll be difficult to near impossible for Russia. I mean, Russia has to defend itself and stand up for itself in the international arena, so they're going to have to respond. And the United States in this new Cold War has been very aggressive. The United States had promised that it wouldn't expand NATO on Russia's borders, but it's gone ahead and expanded NATO, and that's seen as a threat from a Russian point of view. And the United States is also heavily arming the Ukrainian military as it's made its incursions into eastern Ukraine. So these are all seen as provocations from a Russian perspective, and they do, I mean, it's a responsibility of their leadership to stand up for their country and defend themselves.
And in your perspective, what would be a proper response from Russia at this point?
Well, I think Russia should try and do everything it can to try and mitigate tensions and to raise concerns in the international community that a new arms race will be very destructive for both sides, both for the United States and for Russia. And this is very dangerous for the world at large because it could lead to a war or even a nuclear war. So I think raising that alarm in the world community, while at the same time they do have to prepare to defend their society and their country if the United States is going to threaten them.
And as you said, this is a global issue. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman, Geng Shuang, said the U.S. ought to let go of its Cold War mentality. What do you make of China's reaction to this U.S. missile test?
Yeah, I think it's very disturbing. I think people forget the history of the Cold War and how destructive it was. And I think we have to remind the public that the Cold War led to a heavy investment in military at the expense of social welfare programs and nearly led the world to the brink during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
So you don't think it was out of line for China to chime in here?
Well, China's also been threatened. I mean, both the Obama and Trump administration have engaged in military escalations in the Southeast Asia, South Pacific seas with a naval buildup. There are allegations that the CIA is supporting the protesters in Hong Kong. So, China has felt the threat as well from the United States. So, I mean, there is a natural reaction for Chinese as well as Russian leaders to be alarmed by certain U.S. behaviors and to raise concern among the world community as to what the United States is doing. So I think that's appropriate.
And let's switch gears here to look at how the U.S. media has portrayed the playing out of the INF Treaty. The media here in the U.S. has kind of focused on Russia's recent testings of their missiles. But what critical points do you think they have ignored as it pertains to the U.S. actions?
Well, I think the media coverage, is very one-sided. They depict Russia as this major military threat. They employ these kind of Cold War language and stereotypes about Russia, and they're not really critically scrutinizing what the United States has been doing to provoke Russia. Things like stationing missiles along Russia's, in Eastern Europe, things like expanding NATO towards Russia's borders, that's rarely mentioned in the media. So Russia looks like the bad guy and looks like the menacing threat to humanity, But when you look at the big picture and you look how the United States has provoked Russia, and also how the United States has a military empire of bases, these things are never discussed. So the world looks a lot different when you consider what the United States is doing. You can see that a lot of Russian activity is more in the realm of defense and trying to defend themselves, but they're presented as the aggressor and the danger to a world order.
Yeah. All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Thank you for bearing with us through this few-second delay. Professor and Cold War historian Jeremy Kuzmarov, thank you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.